Board fiscal year 2026. At this time, I would like to now call the meeting to order and begin by introductions of the members and our staff. Cheryl.
Cheryl Tagayas, Secretary.
Sean Fahey, member.
Maggie Oldfield, member.
Jim Davis, member.
And Meredith Hall serving as chair. With us, we have our staff, Avante.
Avante Grady, Assistant Director.
Liz Manning, Planning Director.
Great, thank you and welcome to all. First, we have our administrative items with us two sets of meeting minutes from February 12th and 26th with Cheryl's edits. Has everybody had a chance to review those?
All I saw was a spelling error for my name, but that's okay.
That's okay.
I'm not worried about it.
All right, can I have a motion
Check
to
that, Sean.
It's okay.
motion to approve the minutes of February 12th and 26th?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Future minute dates, our regular scheduled meetings for April will be the 9th and the 23rd. And then we will be meeting and we'll have a meeting set up the evenings just prior to town meeting, which will be April. I'm sorry, that's May, so that'll be our future. So we'll put those on for May and discuss those at our next meeting, but regularly for April are the 9th and the 23rd. And then we have a staff update.
All right. You wanna kick it off? You've got the first item on the list.
Yeah, happy to. So Eco One Stop application, it is submitted, so
Congrats.
Hey, that was a lot of work.
yeah, no, it was awesome to get that done. Got 5 letters of support, one of them from the Climate Action Planning Committee actually, so I stopped by their meeting last week, and so it's great to get their support, also from the DPW director, from Liz, from MAPC, and yeah, so it was great to get that in. So
Right.
hopefully we'll hear over the summer kind of status of that application. Sounds
Thank you for your work on that.
And that's got a really, Avante did a terrific job with the scope and really kind of outlining, with a lot of thought and detail the tasks. So if we get the funding, it should hopefully go quickly and go well. That's the
Yeah.
hope.
Yeah, yep, I think it's, under like a FY 27 cycle, so yeah, looking forward to that. So cross my fingers, so.
Good.
Yeah, want me to,
You can hop in on the MVP update as well in the open space.
great, so MVP 2.0, so the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant, we received that in the amount of $260,000. So that's basically gonna be a regional climate resilience, planning effort. Norwood is taking the lead on this project. I attended the kickoff meeting last month with the environmental coordinator, and so kind of the next steps after that. So that was kind of like a regional cohort, so there's multiple projects going on. So this next kickoff meeting is gonna be just with these other towns, and so we'll kind of discuss next steps. So in terms of the actual project concept, that hasn't been decided yet, but I think the idea behind it, as in the 2-pager as that shares, is it's gonna be kind of co-created with the community in terms of what the priorities are. And then ultimately, there's gonna be this like seed project that is completed over like a 9-month period, which will help address some of those priorities.
So I have a question. Does this relate at all to the climate action planning report? Because the environmental coordinator or Norwood, is that who's leading it? It's the environmental coordinator for Milton.
So that's for Milton. In
Okay.
terms of like the Milton side of things, Cassie, the environmental coordinator, she's been kind of taking the lead in terms of Milton's involvement, but I've been trying to like stay tuned as well and, keep updated on the project. But yeah, Norwood is taking the lead on it.
So can you just help me a little bit, like the vulnerability, is that related to environmental impacts of climate change, or is it a different kind of vulnerability?
I'd say it's definitely connected to climate change, so that's something that is on my radar, because
Okay.
obviously I did submit this application for a climate action plan, and then this is also gonna be about like climate resilience and priorities, so, ideally, I'd like to ensure that like these two plans are, are coordinated, are working
Yeah.
together, so that, they're not like overlapping or, stepping on each other, so hopefully they can work together, and a project like this can like help with, you know, achieving some of the like goals and strategies that are in the climate action
Okay,
plan.
great. So this is a state grant as well?
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can do open space. So open space and rec plan was able to get a change order finalized, so that was signed by Horsley Witten and the town administrator today. So that's great. That establishes a clear timeline for each of the deliverables for finishing the open space and rec plan. I did also request for the excuse me for the consultant to draft a update memo relating to the status of the open space and rec plan for the Open Space and Recreation Planning Committee.
Great.
Just to help reestablish connection, so.
That's great. Looking forward to seeing that, get wrapped up. It'd be nice to have that completed. So it's been a lot of work, so that's great.
In the win column. Okay, so shared supporting housing office. We met with the owner's consultant at 440 Granite, as well as the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust and the town's consultant, Accenture, to ensure that the units at 440 Granite will be eligible for the SHI. So there's some paperwork and some effort there. I feel like I might have shared this last time, so I'll go quickly. They're also working on getting the 71 through 73 Warren units onto the SHI for us as well, so we'll be following up on that. I quickly looked at the select board's meeting today to see if this item came up on their agenda, and I did not see it, the traffic calming master plan. So I will circle back with Nick Milano on that one to see what the status is on that project. Housing production plan, so we have a signed contract with Karen Sonneborg.
Great.
Yep, so that's great. She's looking to meet with Avanti and I just for a quick, kind of update call, staff to staff. And then, then we've got to work on I need to understand how the committee gets appointed and composed. I still haven't quite I don't know that I have a definite answer to that yet. I don't know if the select board has to appoint or if the select board has to create it. So that's more information will come on that one, but I believe there's an understanding that it will be the 6 members, 2 planning, 2 select board, and 2 from the housing trust.
So just for FYI, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
So, I've said this before, I'm not a huge fan of committees, and, sometimes committees can slow work down because you have to then report back to your appointing committees. And I know how important this housing production plan is, and I feel like it's the fastest to end is like a straight line. Is it really necessary to have a committee? I'm not familiar with the past housing production plan, so I don't know how long it took. Sometimes with more committee members, it takes longer to, get a quorum, work with
Yeah.
everyone's schedules, and if we're represented on it and the select board, then it adds more time, commitment, other meetings.
Yes.
So is it possible not to have a committee, or is it the normal thing is to have a committee?
Yeah,
Can I
go ahead.
comment on how it was done before, because I
Mhm.
did serve on the committee. One of a couple of things that the committee helped with is the consultant will pull together all the demographic data, which is really a good chunk of it. But the consultant won't be able to really identify where potential housing opportunities will be in the next 5 years, and will rely on staff and committee members to help with that. And then also like a public forum, because there are strategies in there that will get assigned to planning board, to select board. And so having, people representative who can know about that, sort of the discussion about those strategies, what's already been in the works, what's in the works for zoning, is just helpful to the consultant. So I do think it was helpful to her, and you certainly could ask her, I mean, about that from the past. But I know that Melinda Collins, when she was a select board member, she chaired that committee. And it had a sunset period, and I don't remember how often it met, honestly. But I do think it was helpful for the consultant to have input from folks who are more knowledgeable about Milton.
And they can, I'm not suggesting that the consultant shouldn't report to a select board meeting or a planning board meeting or affordable housing trust meeting, that they can go to the regularly scheduled meetings, take input from that board, and then the consultant can go and do whatever they want. It's just my understanding is that we're at risk because our housing production plan has expired. So I thought it was a sense of urgency to get it completed. And, sometimes committees can be a hurdle. And I just thought maybe you could just move along faster, and if it has already been done and it's sort of just a check the box type thing,
You're gonna have to update those things that I just mentioned. If you look at the prior one, you'll see there's a bunch of strategies that are assigned and parcels that are assigned. And that needs to be updated, and that consultant will need guidance. And so
Yeah, I guess my
That's a good
question
idea to have a
too is
committee.
like, open meeting law and, taking minutes and, is this a working group? Is it ad hoc? Is it something that has to be officially created? I just don't know. I don't know the answer to those things yet. And so maybe I like your suggestion of, have a chat with the consultant and see, it could be that a working group is sufficient. And maybe it's not it doesn't have to be as formal. I honestly don't know.
one thing I would say is like anytime there's a recommendation for zoning change or for parcels to be looked at, not having a public meeting about that and discussion, I think would raise some eyebrows. So that's why I do think it should be public process. And if no elected board members are part of that process along the way, then people are going to say, well, it was just a consultant who did it. I just think it's gonna
Yeah,
have
so
more
I'm not
buy-in if it's a public
even
process.
suggesting that. I still believe in a public process. I'm just thinking we don't need to have another committee comprised of multiple of us and multiples of other. The process would be the same. We'd have a public forum. We would take input from the residents. We would take input from any other committee. But I'm just trying to, move it down the field in a as quick and most efficient way possible, because I don't want to put us at risk for another 40B just because we don't have this plan in place. So I'm not trying to shortcut the process. It's just trying to make it a little bit more efficient.
And I would have a question on how frequently it has to be updated. Do you recall?
5 years?
Every 5 years, because it expired under, and we weren't aware until it had already expired, because it would have been nice to actually start working on this in advance. And it was such a robust plan the last time. It was very impressive, the housing production plan, that it would be nice to maybe get a sense from Karen on what her needs were, would be, and how we could best be most efficient in getting this done with the input of all three boards, and in public.
Okay.
Public forum.
Yeah, and I would definitely be advising her. I asked her if she was still had the same, kind of availability and time frame as when we first talked back in December, and she said yes. So I will be saying to her, anything you can do, prior to the committee.
And maybe her
ki-
timeline
know,
of,
that she'd
you know,
like just
similar,
getting-
what,
Yeah,
don't know if
just
she
get
could
some of
do
that
that.
stuff going as fast as possible,
Yeah.
you know, because I get it, that there's a sense of urgency.
if we're exposed, yeah.
Okay, quickly on the MBTA communities data, we were able to get those data layers onto the main GIS landing page. So that's great, that's some progress
I
there.
test drove that works well.
Oh, good, awesome, yeah. I mean, that was really the main thing, was just to kind of have it be, you know, this is the last data, it's the approved data, it's there, it's on the main page, so I'd like to do more, but we'll get there. There's a legislative breakfast at the State House on April 9th from 10 to 11:30. That link in the staff report will get you right to the sign-up page if anyone's interested. It's gonna be in Boston or anywhere nearby that day. We're gonna have the library, parking, and the Milton Fire Station RFP later on the agenda. And Cheryl had asked at the last meeting what our remaining budget was for planning studies, I believe. I hope I got that right. And as of today, we've got 27,272. I've asked KP Law to give us a scope of services for recodification. They're hoping to have it available for our second meeting in April. So if the board is, you know, comfortable with moving forward with them, then that would be my recommendation, would be to encumber those funds for that purpose, so we don't lose them.
So you said that, I'm sorry, that what they would have by the second meeting of April would be the proposal?
A scope, yeah.
Scope.
Yeah, a scope for recodification. And I thank you, I shared that red line document with Carolyn. Cheryl was able, I don't know who, I don't think I shared it any further, did I'm not
I
sure
have
who
a
I shared it with.
printout copy in my,
Okay.
Tim had provided me with it, because I wanted to sort of start going through and seeing how significant the changes were, and it was just taking out words, you know, a little, how extensive the changes were, so.
Right, so Carolyn essentially, you know, kind of outlined their typical process for a project like this. And so she needed to understand what had already been analyzed. And it could line up very well with what they do, and it will knock a whole segment of this thing right out of the budget, which would be fabulous. I don't know that for sure yet, but it will kind of get us off to a faster start, hopefully. So
And
that's good.
so this 27,000 is what is in our budget now. The proposal is for recodification. I thought I heard though that $35,000 is gonna be allocated to the recodification out of the free cash. So is it 27 plus 35?
Yeah, that would be my recommendation, because it is gonna be a $60,000
So it's gonna be that much, okay. that was-
effort, I would think.
Yeah.
And she also talked about sort of chunking it into 3 town meetings and had some different ideas, some kind of
Good.
early sort of spitball ideas, so.
That's fantastic. To have KP Law on board to be able to help
Mhm.
us, because that was part of our, actually, like, who do we hire to even get us to that next step? And if KP Law can do the majority of it in-house, I think that's.
So I know carpooled with the chair of the ZBA, Kathleen O'Donnell, last weekend to the Citizen Planner Training Collaborative in Worcester, and I told her about the codification. And so I copied her as well, and I would just request that you keep her in the loop as well on
sure.
this, because
Yes.
obviously so many things come to them.
Totally.
And then obviously our building commissioner too.
Mhm,
Because,
mhm.
you know, the ones who work with the code are the ones who see challenges with the code. And so if there's things that weren't even in the audit that they have come across, I think would be beneficial to have their input early rather than later.
Totally agree.
And are you anticipating any other funds that we would be needed? Cause if we spend all the 27,000, then our budget would be 0 for the rest of the year. Should we move any money in it?
Well, I honestly, the effort it takes to get the money under contract is, we're already almost in April.
Yeah.
In
Okay.
June,
So,
it's June
so I
30th,
think
it's-
I just, this to me is just the quickest guess, line between A and B.
So do you need a motion?
I was gonna bring it back to you guys, like with the scope in April. Do you just want me to kind of move faster?
I mean, I'm fine committing the funds to it and reviewing the final scope, you know. I mean, I think the scope is, you know, after she reviews it, it's pretty straightforward, so, I mean, Meredith, if you would take the motion, I'll make a motion.
I would be comfortable with that, given that subject to approval of the scope. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so I'll make a motion to allocate the remaining planning board funds of 27 for this fiscal year of 27,272 to the recodification, and with the intent of final scope from KP Law to be reviewed at a meeting in April, a meeting of this board in April.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's it?
Okay, great. So at this time, if there is anyone who would like to speak, public comment, we can hold it at this time. If there's something that is on the, on the agenda, you'll have time to speak on that as well, including the public hearing. So if there is anybody online,
I do have Christine Hodlin has raised their hand.
okay?
Good evening. Can you all hear me?
Yes, good evening, welcome.
Yep, great, thank you. I just want to make a couple comments. I appreciate that you, I guess, spoke briefly about the library parking at your last meeting, and I see that you have it on the agenda. And I just wanted to say, you know, first of all, thanks for the couple of planning board members who attended the forum. I didn't hear any specific input to you, but all of our information that was available is on our website for anyone to go to. The recording of the session is available. We've received lots of comments from citizens. Those are also available for you to review. We're planning another public forum to go through the RFP again and get more input. And if you would like to join, you're of course welcome like anybody else's. And you can always submit your questions or any comments that you might have to either Will or I directly, which I think he stated at the forum that we had. So we're following our direction from the select board. We received a consensus from them to form this task force, and the library trustees actually paid for the consultant who's working with us on the RFP. And we're looking to provide that RFP to the select board in the near future. So, like I said, welcome to any input you might like to have. Please contact us, either of us, to schedule that or to submit it directly if you'd like.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other hands up?
That is the only hand.
Okay, great. So with that, we can now move to our public hearing. It is 7:05. I'll call the public hearing order. The public hearing for the Springtown meeting warrant to see if the town will vote to amend Chapter 275 of the general bylaws, known as the zoning bylaws, by amending Article 1 definitions and striking Section 275-3.2C signs and billboards and Section 275-3.3D signs permitted in the business district, and adding new Section 275-3.25 signs to regulate signs. So with that, we did, just to let people know, Liz accompanied myself at the warrant committee last Monday, and they voted to support the sign bylaw. There were a couple of little questions, but there were no changes made. We had, at our last meeting, had addressed the questions that they had, and Liz did a great job of sort of going back and forth, making sure they had complete information. We were responsive, and Carolyn Murray from KP Law was really quick to get back with answers that we could, move this along. So in that process, what was really helpful is Larry Johnson, who sits on the sign review committee, who it was great because he is Larry's a member of the sign review committee.
Chris, you need to mute yourself.
Chris, you're unmuted.
Oh, no, she's.
Okay. Yeah, so Larry was really great in sort of going back, and he actually began sort of having a presentation of a flow chart, which explained the process for sign review. And Liz was able to pick up because interestingly, it wasn't the permanent signs that they had the most questions on, it was the temporary signs that you see, especially this time of year, whether it's garden club events, Boy Scouts, different things that start popping up, Foundation for Education banners, all the different items, how that process goes through, what that process is in a flow chart, because a lot of it would not fall under this bylaw, and there's a lot of exemptions, and the select board actually has their own process. But Liz was able to put a flow chart to make it simpler for the warrant committee to understand, and I think it will be helpful at town meeting as well. And I don't know, Liz, would you wanna just walk through that flow chart?
Sure, yeah.
And then we can see.
I'll share my screen. I'll just kind of very, very quickly go through a version of the presentation. Okay.
Everybody, that was in our.
So let's see. Yeah, so essentially, for members of the public that are here and for others that might be listening in, the planning board met in session multiple meetings since December 2025, consulted extensively with the sign review committee, town council at KP Law, the building commissioner, the town administrator, and the Department of Public Works. The Milton Chamber of Commerce has been provided the bylaw language as well, and I will be making a presentation to them next week at their monthly meeting. The new bylaw attempts to codify the sign review and approval process in a clear and concise way. It allows more flexibility to the sign review committee to recommend changes, styles, and technology and taste change over time. It prescribes a clear approval and appeal process, and it attempts to balance the needs for business to inform customers of their services while protecting the overall character of the town. And then I just want to make the point as well that once the bylaw has been approved at town meeting, then planning staff will work to update the sign and facade design handbook. The process for that is in consultation with the planning board. Wrong way. Right, so this is essentially the flow chart that Larry Johnson had created to help walk the warrant committee through the process. Just sort of lays out the building commissioner's role, the sign review committee's role, where the ZBA might come into the process if necessary, if there's a denial or there's some an appeal or what have you. Or the special permits that are laid out in the new bylaw as well. Just sort of walks you through how that works and, the changes that might need to be made. It comes back to the sign review again, and then you sort of make your way to an approval. Hopefully that's a pretty straightforward, depiction of the steps, and I'm hopeful that it will make it easier for businesses and other folks that want to come in and get one of these sign permits. So there was a lot of talk about the temporary sidewalk signs. So I went ahead and just kind of, created a flow chart for that as well. The main difference here is that these do not go to the sign review committee. So the process is completely with the building commissioner. And then the thing that was added, which was at the recommendation of the planning board, was to have the DPW do a sign off when the sandwich board signs are in the public right of way. So I had a conversation with the town engineer today, and he was comfortable with that. That was something that the warrant committee had wanted us to circle back on. He was comfortable with that. I told him that what we'll do is we'll make sure that there's really clear directions in the guidelines. So these two tables are really just sort of, comparing the prior to the current bylaw to what's being proposed. nothing really new here that we haven't been over, sort of, you know, I feel like we've been over this a lot. I don't know if there's anything on here that people wanna talk about, or if you're comfortable, and we can just kind of move on to the items that were, I'm sorry.
I think we're all comfortable, but because this is the public hearing, I think it would be beneficial just to give an overview.
Sure, sure, absolutely. So one of the issues with the existing bylaw is that there was always some sort of question. It was questionable whether or not these sign regulations apply outside of the business districts. So the new bylaw is very clear that there's, you know, certain rules in residential districts and there's certain rules in business districts. And lots of, you know, language around, you know, pre-existing businesses that might already exist in the residential districts. So it hopefully really clarifies that, that language that was confusing and or didn't really answer the question. So there's an effort to modernize and clarify definitions specifically for things like billboards and things with some of the questions around the neon and LED signs. Also more clarity about temporary signs and the processes that you need to follow there. Let's see, design elements. So the design elements typically have been contained within the guidelines. So the effort here will be to update those guidelines and to ensure that they're clear and, you know, useful for the folks that are using them, the business owners and the sign companies and what have you. So the permit process, the current permit process included, you know, would potentially land at the select board. So, you know, we had a lot of conversations about, you know, the building commissioner, the sign review committee would the permit gets submitted to the building commissioner. The building commissioner forwards it to the sign review committee, and if everyone's in agreement that it meets all the requirements and et cetera, then the sign review committee gives a favorable recommendation, and the building commissioner issues the permit. If the sign review committee has questions or concerns, there could be a process back and forth where things get amended and what have you. But if the sign review committee is not in agreement, then in the past, it would be appealed to the select board. So that was one of the things that we worked really hard to do, was to eliminate that role for the select board. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to have them sort of, you know, kind of come in at the end like that. So this new process brings those appeals to the zoning board of appeals. Very clear process, very clear standards. So that's probably the biggest difference there. The same process from the building commissioner to the sign review committee for most applications. There were no special provisions before. This new proposed language adds rules for restaurants, fuel stations, bed and breakfasts, directional signs. I think those were the categories there. Hopefully I didn't miss any. Non-conforming signs, very vague, existing sort of standard of good cause. So non-conforming signs may be altered under this proposed language only with a special permit and in a very clear process. Waivers, same thing. The sign review committee had the ability to allow additional area for good cause, very broad, somewhat vague. So now we've got clear percentages for waivers: 25% for dimensions, 25% for area, 50% for setback. And there's clear criteria that they need to meet to get those waivers. So sign area. So this changes the allowed sign area. The sign area currently is 2 square feet per linear foot of the facade. So that translates into, if you've got a 20-foot wide you know, storefront, then you're allowed up to 40 square feet for your sign area. So this is reducing that to 1 square foot. There was a lot of consultation again with the sign review committee and the chair of the sign review committee about this. There was study of existing storefronts, and it felt that this was a reasonable change to that area, that total sign area. Let's see. So this is more permissive for awnings. The current language does not allow awnings to have lettering, but this new proposal will allow lettering on awnings so that they can double as signage. The window signs have been reduced from 20% of the area. It currently is allowed, and this proposes 10% of the area. The sidewalk and A-frame signs, we already talked about that. The DPW is now involved. There's, specific dimensional requirements and what have you that need to be met in order to have that approved. It's an annual approval, so a business would have to come back annually to re-up their ability to put out a sandwich board sign. So with the illuminated signs in the current bylaw, illuminated signs are allowed if it's a steady, non-flashing, non-glare lighting. This new proposed language is proposed to prohibit LED, neon, or exposed light sources, and that reverse lit and internal illumination require a special permit, and then limits on timing for when those illuminated signs can be on. Projecting signs, there are some changes in the dimensions there, some minor tweaks there. Freestanding signs, there was not an explicit height limit. There's now an 8-foot height limit in the business districts. Directional signs, I think there is additional square footage. There's additional square footage per tenant in the proposed language, so that hopefully broadens it a little bit for folks. Temporary signs, the temporary signs have always been a 45-day limit, but the bylaw gives an exhaustive list of exempted signs. So hopefully we've covered everybody who's out there that wants to do something that's a nonprofit or a community group or a political organization or something of that nature. So temporary sale signs. So currently Currently, temporary sale signs are allowed for 60 days, and you can cover up to 20% of the window area, and it's included in your total sign area. This new language allows temporary sale signs to be displayed for 180 days, so that's more permissive. 90 days for exterior temporary signs, and it does not count towards the total sign area. So that gives a little bit more flexibility for folks on that one. And then I just went ahead and just kind of put together a couple of slides mostly for the public. I know some of us were asking about the point of purchase display, so I thought that one was kind of cute. So there's an awning with some lettering, a blade or projecting sign, LED neon. That would be an example of LED neon, which is prohibited in this bylaw. Reverse lit channel. A typical directory sign. Sometimes these will be on a wall or they could be freestanding. Indirect lit, which is the gooseneck lights. That's down in Milton Village, and then a freestanding sign, Winter Valley. So I think the last piece of this was just a really quick run through, because the language that I just wanted to make sure I was clear about the language that was advertised, and then the changes that have been made since the board last met. So we've already kind of talked about most of it. Sign temporary is a definition. The language for that referred to business use for temporary signs was moved very, very clearly into section 12, which deals just with businesses. So it just sort of takes any question about what that definition is trying to address away, because there's no language in there anymore that deals with businesses. So again, to clarify the community group sandwich board signs, there was a language added to one of the exemptions to very expressly exempt nonprofit community group A-frame signs and lawn signs. Temporary sale, we already talked about that, the more generous time periods, and the fact that the that language that had been in the temporary sign definition was moved to this. It wasn't changed, it was just moved to this section 12G. Sidewalk signs, we included the liability insurance paragraph back, which was the recommendation of the planning board. The, this section on page 14 in the bylaw that you folks have that was in your packet for the meeting, which is dated March 19th. On page 14, you'll see where that language is. And it has that reference to the DPW now needing to do that additional approval in the public right of way. And enforcement, so, and one of the things we talked about as well was the fines at our last meeting. So the way this has changed is it's been simplified to just point back to the existing enforcement language that's already in the bylaw, with the intention that when we start to move through recodification, we will address fines comprehensively throughout the bylaw. It did not make a ton of sense to try to really get into the nitty-gritty with trying to figure out the right numbers for just this one use, especially with that process coming. And I did circle back on having it in the guidelines, and town council's recommendation was that fines are clearly should stay in the bylaw. So those are the changes.
Great.
Okay.
Anything else? And we can questions. Liz, thank you very much. I think that was great. Liz did a wonderful job in presenting to the warrant committee and just simplified everything as best it can be.
So is that gonna be the type of presentation for town meeting?
I was gonna ask the board, I think it would be great. I think keeping it all simple. I don't know, we do need to put, because the question, Carolyn had originally said, you don't need to put the full text of the zoning bylaw in the warrant, but I think Nick felt that it should go in. So they will have had the full text. So I think that would be really helpful to have that presentation.
I think the comparison was changed and the process chart diagrams are helpful. It'll be very helpful to town meeting.
And can we send it out prior to town meeting members? I know town clerk probably doesn't have all town meeting members' emails, but I sometimes receive, emails from her. Can she put it out in advance so people can become a little bit more familiar? Because the chart will be in your presentation,
Yeah.
but not actually in the warrant.
Right.
The moderator also puts presentations on the town meeting website. So,
You could
the
ask for that.
sooner, I don't know when that goes up, but
Okay.
but the clerk has definitely sent out emails as well,
Okay.
even if it's just to alert people to go to that section
Oh,
to
okay.
to look at it.
Okay. Good.
All right, so we can open it up to anyone on the public on Zoom, if there are anyone who would like to ask any questions or speak. Currently the public hearing.
Don't see any hands raised.
All right, any further discussion, or we can go ahead and close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing for the proposed sign bylaw.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Great.
Do we need to make a
That's-
motion to submit?
That's
the
what I think, I
revision?
think we should just make a formal motion to submit this.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to submit the March 19th, 2026 draft of the proposed sign bylaw to the select board.
I'll second
Second.
that also.
In the warrant committee. We've already sent it to the warrant committee. Select board and warrant committee for our final version.
Right, okay.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all, and thank you, Liz, for facilitating between Carol and our board to try to get this cleaned up.
And the sign review, board.
And the sign
committee.
review committee, who
Yeah.
was very helpful, Larry and John Sikowitz were great.
Piece of zoning is a lot.
And Larry will be there also to sort of walk through this as well, you know, and answer field questions.
Is Larry a town meeting member?
He is a town meeting member and on the warrant committee,
You're an IT guy,
an IT guy, yeah, so,
butcher.
but he's fantastic. Good, all right, so the next item on our agenda is the library parking, development of the RFP. And what I thought would be, Cheryl, since you were the most involved, Liz was sort of reaching out to Will Adamczak, and he said, you know, probably Cheryl would know more about it than anybody, so could maybe just walk through how we got from where we were to where we are now, and just a status update.
Sure, happy to.
You want me to share the slides?
I'm not gonna run through the slides, I don't
Okay,
think,
okay,
because that
all right.
was the consultant who went through them, but
Consultant's
I mean, if you,
presentation?
if you
Okay.
have questions, since they've been in the folder. You'll recall that the master plan implementation committee was working with the library trustees to help solve for their parking challenges, which date back to even when the master plan was done, you know, 2014. And they had begun that process with predecessors to Liz and also with the DPW, looking for any place on their property that they could do it, and then at town hall, et cetera. So the master plan implementation committee expanded upon those options and looked at, I think, 6 or 8 different options for them. And they developed a set of criteria for what would meet their needs. And the one that they identified to meet their needs is on Canton Avenue, next to the yellow house. And so, since that land is owned by the select board, there had been outreach to the select board a couple of times, or at least 2 or 3 times over the course of the MPIC study.
We mean owned by the town of Milton.
Did I say that?
The select board.
You said
In
the
the care of the
select
select
board
board.
owns- okay.
Yeah, owned by the town of Milton in the care of the select board.
For town meeting.
Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, so-
Disposal would agree town meeting, yeah. That's
Yes,
right.
ultimately, yeah. But the first stop, I guess, is the select board. So the next step with that was to look at, there was a couple of questions that at the select board about how this would get paid for. If it's just a parking structure, or if it's a parking structure combined with some other use, it might open up avenues for ways to have it be paid for through a public-private partnership. So the select board was interested in continuing to explore that potential because of competing demands for taxpayer dollars otherwise. So the library trustees, you know, the MPIC sunsetted, as we all know, and library trustees took up the next steps and formed an ad hoc committee and asked me to be on that for continuity for work that had been done previously, as well as they asked Megan Haggerty to be on that, and Chris Hodlin as a trustee, representing the trustees, and then Will Adamczyk, the library director. And they engaged with a consultant, Rhine LLC, to help advance it. Now, that Ken and Ryan had suggested the best way to determine whether there's really any opportunity for feasibility for a public-private partnership was to kind of take it out to the public in an RFP process. And so the idea was to get as much community feedback about what people would find, whether they thought that was a good idea, what if they did, what other uses might they find desirable in that location. So that's the public hearing, kind of laid that out, and
There've
there,
actually been 2 public hearings.
but there was one in,
There was a first one.
yeah, in
Which
June.
was very different than the second. Is that recorded? Is that available?
Yes, it's, they have that recorded.
Okay.
Yeah, and So they're collecting, as Chris said, collecting feedback, and will incorporate that feedback into and take it back out to for another public forum. They've been in touch with a DCR forester who's preparing a report, and also VHB, who's a traffic consultant who's prepared a memo. So they'll share those results as they get those. So that's where it is. And as Chris said, can reach out to, as in the presentation, their emails were in it, and I think if you want to share that slide, Liz, that has their email addresses, and or even there's a QR code if you want to share that. That's where people can take a survey. So they have a survey for collecting information and then email.
So the slide that says provide your input and has will.
Yeah, so it's the wrap up slide.
Yeah,
okay. The second to last one. And then right before that is the QR code. So if you 26 has, slide 26 has the email addresses, and slide 25 has the QR code.
Okay. So there's the emails.
So just to be clear, it's not clear that there will be an opportunity to do anything with the parking. If that's the case, then there'll still have to be a process to seek public funding, to build parking if there's support for that. But all the history of why they need that parking is in those two public forums, and probably best found or learned by watching those and reading through the presentations, because that's not really my expertise in terms of the library.
Because every time I drive by, there's always parking.
It
all the
depends,
time.
yeah, it depends on the time of day and the kind of program, the programming, like, I live, just down the street, and I drive by oftentimes at the times at which they say are their most challenging times, which is late morning. So when they can't book programs back to back because there's not enough time for the parking lot to shift. So it limits how many programs that they can run in the morning, which are their most popular programs for young families.
Yeah, I was gonna
And-
say that the one time that I went in the parking lot was actually full, I just parked on Canton Ave and it was no problem.
Yeah, well,
I'm
again, if
having a
you,
hard time seeing 50 to 60 more spaces.
well, again, I'm not here to talk about what the library has identified as their need. So if you want to send those questions to Chris, as she suggested, I'm sure that they can get back to you with how they've determined that that's what their need is.
Okay.
So the first public forum that I attended, it was a lot of the Sustainable Milton and the Shade Tree Committee. You were there the first forum, and Chris was the moderator. And almost unanimously, the entire room spoke out in opposition to clear cutting the woodlot and putting a parking garage there. It just, for the most part, I think there was one person who spoke in favor of it, understanding not that that people don't want to support the library, but to put a parking garage was against all sustainability, and for a historic scenic road was not the view that you want to see driving down Canton Ave, as a parking garage. So then the next forum, it became, and it was going to be an incredible, I think, there was a number.
So don't forget, it's a parking lot. It's not a garage. So
It was a 2-story level.
only 2-story if there's a building on top of it. So it's a building at that point, or it's a parking lot. So it's never just a parking structure that's called a garage. So let's just be clear about that.
It was a 2-level.
But do you have to clear cut the parking lot to make a parking lot?
You
Whether
don't
it's a
have
garage
to-
or a
and
parking lot?
You don't have to clear cut either. There's, an evaluation of the trees is ongoing. But as far as that June
Yeah.
forum, people, it's recorded, the library has the
Yeah.
results. And they're having multiple forums so that as many people as possible can provide their input. So they have that input from
Right.
that June 24. They have the input from the one they just recently had. They're collecting survey information and emails, and they'll have another forum.
And I think that's great, but I'm just trying to, for the public's sake. So the next forum that I attended to, a lot of the Shade Tree Committee, Sustainable Milton people, I think they didn't attend because they thought this is really not a realistic project. So the next concept that I viewed, which is 28 units, it was a discussion of 28 units plus a possible cafe, which would then equal the necessity for about 70 parking spaces, because if the library wants 40, you have 28 units or 24 units, how many? I think it was 28. You will need, in a cafe, you will need 70 parking spaces. So what I want people to visualize before, because this is library money, trustees' money, is what people need to, because there are wetlands back behind, that you are limited, you have to have a setback from the wetlands protection under the wetlands. You have to have it set back closer to the road, which would mean having something that would look like 36 Central, which is 4 stories. 36 Central only has 18 units. So if you could imagine 28 units to justify the parking for 70, first floor cafe is very similar to 36 Central. You have a 4-story building sitting on a 2-story parking garage. And I just can't imagine that we would want that, to do that to sort of our historic National Register location, clear cutting the trees and putting an apartment building with a cafe, which is very suitable on Central Avenue. But to do that in an area, in a location that we are expanding the hospital, we're gonna have a memory care, we will have a 40B of some size, and then potentially a new school. That is probably the worst intersection to add more development, more cars, and that is what you will be seeing, that the impacts would be just detrimental to the town, and aesthetically, it would be, to me, it would be as bad, if not worse, than tearing down Town Hall and putting up what we have. I mean, that is putting in
Well,
an apartment building in your
Chris-
town center.
Chris
It's-
suggested that you submit your comments
Yep,
to the
I'm-
library trustees, and those are your comments, and they will take those into consideration.
But I think people don't know, they're like, oh, we could do some housing. You know what we were shown at that forum? We were shown Islington, this really charming, what it used to be a church with no parking underneath. It was just a cute little retail area with some housing, very small, maybe 1.5 to 2 stories. That is not what we would be talking about here. And I just want to be fair and to be, you're an architect, design a cafe, 70 spaces and 28 units. That will be just
So that,
altering the character of our town beyond what we're seeing at 440.
so
and-
you
and-
realize that
yeah.
they said at the forum, and you were at the forum, so you know that there is no project being proposed. It is being an RFP to see what ideas there are, to see if a public-private partnership would work there. And what was tested out was what might the site be able to accommodate at the most? And that was put forward as a possibility. So there is no project for anybody to be opposed to. What people can respond to is whether they think it's worth exploring a public-private partnership to help pay for public infrastructure at a time when we have very difficult budget challenges. So I think that's the thing for people to consider. And if a scale of a building is something that is of the highest concern, then send that comment to the library trustees, and they will consider that in what they put together.
And I would like to, so there's Islington, so that's an example of something that's charming, that's 2.5 stories, that's not New England style, that is not what we would be talking about here. And the other piece is the time, we would have to rezone that it is not zoned for mixed use right now. So that would have to go through a whole zoning process, whole town meeting. I would like to help the library get parking sooner than later. The timeframe of what you would be talking about to try to accomplish something.
In any case, to do the parking, you're talking about at this location will involve some trees. So there's no parking, and if you went to the first forum, you saw all of the locations that were studied and why they didn't meet the criteria. They're far away and don't meet the criteria for having the population that is most in need of spaces, which is young families and older residents, who are the largest users of the library, and they need to have it be convenient and safe.
And
So-
I wanna
So
to
share your
work,
comments
But I
and
think it's
all
planning.
the public that's watching, share it.
The town, as the
Educate
town
yourself
planners,
on what's been done
we-
and then
right.
share your comments.
I just wanna finish, and I'll let, cause I want everyone else to speak. I wanna be realistic about what we're talking about here. And what we're talking about is to create something that is going to create more of a hardship with the traffic, which everyone complains about. We're bringing more traffic in. This is gonna take longer. I would like to work with the library and have our planning board help to do a site walk and actually walk that site. There are things that we can talk about. I think a road diet on Reedsdale, that's gonna be part of our traffic master plan. Reduce it back, that it's a speed, it's a highway, slow that traffic down. And let's give 28 spots along Reedsdale, which used to be there before the renovation. That's where the parking was for the town, was
You'll
on
remember
Canton
then
Reedsdale.
from that June 24 forum that the DPW director was contacted about Reedsdale. And he explicitly at the time, Chase Berkeley said that wouldn't be acceptable. That's a state roadway. They have other plans for that and parking will not go back onto Reedsdale.
Well, we can have that conversation with DOT. I don't know if they understand the concerns. Maybe that was Chase's opinion. I don't know. Look at the road diet that now is on Randolph Avenue, which has been very successful. But I think there are some alternatives
The
that
road
I
diet
would
there
like to
would
look
be
at.
including the same as Randolph Ave, which is to make, they didn't add parking to Randolph Ave. They made bike lanes and safer pedestrian. That's the plan for Reedsdale as well.
Well, I know I've spoken personally to the minister who's across the street, who has a very large parking lot, who said they welcome programming, to come in 6:30, 7 o'clock. That parking lot is completely empty. Only twice in 2 years when I've attend a lot of events there, have I had to cross the street. And it's very rare, and I've usually arrived, after a meeting has begun, and I have happily just walked across the street and parked, and there's even daytime programming. People park across the street for garden club forums, different events that I've been to. And there is a significant amount of parking in that
I
area.
don't
I
know why
know.
you're looking at me.
And I'll
Look
tell
to the
Chris-
library trustees.
And I will
who are
say,
working
when
on
I
this.
hear about things like kindergarten through 8th grade sports signups at the library, why would they be having all of those signups when they have a high school with huge parking areas, bringing sports signups, kindergarten through 8th grade, all grades, but all classes come and sign up at the library? That's gonna create havoc. I think the library is incredibly generous with what they offer, but that does not make sense. Private school buses are dropping off at the time when middle schoolers who have walked are being picked up by the parents, and there are shuttles, private school shuttles coming in and picking up, and parents sitting in the parking lot with their cars idling. That is taking up the parking at a critical hour. I think there needs to be better communication between who is using that. It is, again, I think the library is incredibly hospitable, but there are other areas. Cunningham Hall can
Have
be
you reached
used,
out
the
to
high school.
Will or to Chris?
Yeah, I've spoken to at length, so, and to other people who are in this,
Because you
Yeah.
you sound like you know a lot about how the library uses its facility.
well,
And
I've been
I would
following,
think that
yeah.
that the trustees and the director are the experts on the use of the library.
Absolutely.
So share your observations with them, and then
Yeah,
if you have questions
agree.
about how they're using their facilities, ask them.
There's
We'll still have a
I
discussion.
wanna,
That's-
yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
I-
this is,
let's
this is
move
a,
on.
So the library is
is-
something I'm not an expert on.
no, this is, no, but if you go to the first slide that identifies the committee,
Planning team.
you are on the committee.
I am on the committee as
So-
an
so-
advisory member. Yes,
You
that
look
doesn't.
like a full member to me. Let's go back to who the members are. I wanna look at this for a moment. And I have, so look at the task force. Right? We have the library director. We have the chair of the trustees, buildings and grounds committees. we have a representative from the select board, and we have a representative from the master plan implementation committee. Now, if you're a resident of the town of Milton and you're looking at that task force, and we're talking about our town library and our town parking lot, does anybody recognize an entity that's not included on that task force? Milton's planning board. Milton's planning board is not part of that task force. Our purpose is land use. We have an obligation to serve to support all of the services that are the town of Milton services. But yet, through this whole process, there was no direction, either from the library directly to the planning board, or from the select board to engage the planning board to be a member of the task force, or for the task force to come before the planning board and petition for some help to solve a problem that they have. Regardless of the position that Meredith is talking about and all of the related issues, or your suggestion that Meredith should just send an email to Christine Hodlin, we have a problem as a town with process. You know, I've said in other meetings, recognizing your charge and your responsibility is so important to successful governance. It would be our charge and responsibility to provide help and support to the library to solve a problem that the library has, especially since it's our land. It's the town's land. It's not owned by the select board. It's not owned by the planning board. It's not owned by the library. It's owned by the residents of the town. And it's our responsibility to help town services solve their problems. I'm not talking about necessarily a program inside the library. I'm talking about physical space outside of the library that they say isn't adequate to serve their needs. Well, why isn't the planning board formally?
So Sean,
No, I'm not done yet. When I'm done, I'll stop. But why isn't the planning board formally, brought into the process? In the conversation between the select board and the board of trustees for the library, if I were the select board, I wouldn't want to take the responsibility that they're taking. I would want the planning board to be involved so I could feel comfortable as a select board member that I've engaged the board in town that I could rely upon for this type of an issue. Our problem is process. And there's so much involved in this beyond just process. We're delaying solving a problem. The feasibility of creating 60 parking spaces on that piece of land, the cost to do that is prohibitive. And it's so prohibitive, we create this idea that, well, let's create development that can absorb the cost so that we can make it feasible. And the idea becomes fantasy-like. It just grows and grows and grows. I know what it costs to create parking. It's incredibly expensive to create small parking. I can't see any way that parking could be created on that piece of land without substantial site work and some form of structured parking, some form of concrete structure to create 60 spaces. A parking space requires 325 square feet. If you need 60 parking spaces, you do the simple math. You multiply 60 times 325. 19,500. So you need a 20,000 square foot platform to have 60 parking spaces. That allows for drive aisles and circulation, right? So why 325? Because it's not just the space for the car, it's the space for the drive aisles that you need. The type of parking that's referred to as structured parking. And structured parking describes parking that is not only a concrete structure, it could be a steel structure, It could be what's called hybrid, which is a combination of steel and concrete. Small garages don't get built. And they don't get built because they're cost prohibitive. You have no economy of scale with a small garage. If you tried to build 60-car garage, you're probably gonna spend somewhere in the order of magnitude of $50,000 to $60,000 per parking space. That's not even including your site work. So if you take a 50-car garage or a 60-car garage, we're saying it's 60, times $50,000 per space, you have $3 million to create that structure, that combination of concrete and steel that gives you a 20,000 square foot deck to park cars. Then we know that land, topographically, it's really difficult. It's not a flat piece of land. So you factor in the site work that you'll creating retaining conditions and the earthwork involved in it. Just the parking spaces alone, the probable cost is about $5 million. You will spend $2 million in site work over there to create that. So when I say it's fantasy-like, we have town services that says they don't have adequate parking. We create an idea like this. We think that a private-public partnership is going to solve the problem by absorbing our cost, if not all of it, a large share of it, so that we could have parking. I've yet to meet a developer that's philanthropic. They are profit-oriented. They care about themselves first. And secondly, they care about themselves. This idea that we're going to solve our problem by finding a private use of the land, incorporating into it some form of residence, so we can create 60 parking spaces, and we need a study to do that, or we're gonna issue an long before the RFP should even be talked about, the planning board should have been part of the process. I could easily direct anybody, Simon Design, a Wellesley-based firm, all they do is parking solutions. Call Alan Simon, ask Alan Simon, what do you think of this idea? You could save all kinds of time, all kinds of money, and get an answer in about an hour as to whether or not it's feasible or not. That's all those guys do. Where our problem is process, and look where we are.
So let's speak about process. There is no formal role that this board has ever played in a municipal project. We had no formal role in this building right next to us here, or in the review of whether this building would get reused or torn down, or whether a parking lot would be there or over there or over there, or how many parking spaces would be in it. We have not been involved whatsoever in the RFP for East Milton Square for the old fire station, or in the new fire station planning, or in the Atherton station planning,
We were
or
about to.
in the school
They did bring
that's
it to
being
us for
planned.
review.
Only because we insisted on a little bit of review. They came to the planning board for this project once. This is something that has been talked about. I spoke to prior planning directors about, is that some communities do have a formal review, site plan approval process, or at least review process for their municipal projects. We don't have that process set up here. So this is being treated no differently. A committee is put together. It was, the library took it to the select board and asked them to support this kind of a working group. And that's what the select board agreed to. And if you
Wait, I
think
have a
that
question
a
about
planning
that.
board should have a more formal role,
Before we
then
move
put
on.
the request into the select board and into the library trustees.
Do you like the fact that the planning board has no formal role in this? I don't. As a planning board member, I think it's terrible. I mean, how do you feel?
The problem was when you were our representative on the master plan committee, it was never communicated that this was even a possible concept. And there was no feedback on this, and I did have to, we did ask, but it was
Communicated.
it was both, when I spoke to Tim Zwinski and the town administrator, really did not think a parking garage was a good idea. So I had the sense that this was not gonna keep moving forward, and yet it still is being pushed for. And I just wanna be realistic, and I would like to help the libraries find resolution and a solution.
Whether this board is required or not required, I'm talking about just something that's reasonable, logical, and sensible. It is reasonable to ask the planning board for some input, ask the planning board for some support, ask the planning board to conduct a study for them. You know, the trustees of the library, I assume their credentials align with library programming. I would never run for that position. I don't feel I'm qualified to offer anything. I feel like I'm qualified to offer something here in the planning board. But to think that the library trustees are struggling trying to find a parking solution and the planning board isn't thought of as a reasonable place to go to ask for some support, it's gonna prove to be a pretty frustrating process, because what I just outlined is the conclusion that we'll get to. And we might get to it in 6 months with a response from the private sector that essentially says something very similar to what I said. That's not gonna get us any closer to the solution to the problem. So chasing 60 spaces by hoping for a so-called public-private solution incorporating residential across the street from Town Hall.
Residential was one of the options that was mentioned. Office space was another option that was mentioned. And there's not going to be a prescribed use, as far as I understand, put into the RFP. And just, look, we have an RFP that we're gonna talk about, right, for the East Milton Fire Station, where the use is left wide open. And it's left up to the development community to come back and tell the town whether there's a viable reuse of that fire station. And this is the same idea. The development community will come back and tell the select board and the library trustees whether there's a viable public-private partnership that could help do this here. I don't think anyone in this room is qualified to say yes or no, that there is a viable way to make this work. That's why this is a process that a consultant was gauged and an RFP is being recommended.
Cheryl, the residential, what did you say the residential was an idea? Is that what you described it as? Residential was not, it's not a,
It's not a prescribed requirement.
it's featured. I
It's
mean,
a
when you,
possibility.
well, can you go back to, can somebody take us back to the screen for a moment, please? Back to the document
I don't
that
think
was
you
presented.
watched you didn't attend the forum,
I
I
did
know,
not
Sean,
attend
and I
it.
don't think you
No, I did
watched
not.
it either, because this was made very clear in the forum.
I did not attend it. I
I
did
didn't
not.
either, so we should discuss it now.
But can we
These
go back to
issues
the,
were presented, and it was said there was no other use that was a requirement.
you make it sound like it's my fault for not attending a forum when we're the planning board and we weren't engaged, and I do have an issue with that. But if you scroll through, the featured examples are residential examples.
Well, it talks about initial site studies, parking in residential, parking at office. There's always been discussions about a cafe. I've heard the thought of a
Mhm.
cafe, you know.
But the images as we go to the end, right?
Yeah,
Those were the consultant put together as examples of public-private partnerships where the community yielded a public benefit by having a partnership model. And that's what the consultant's showing. Is it at the exact model for here? No, of course not, because this isn't those communities had a different need.
So who directed the consultant to come up with housing and office space? So I would think when you hire a consultant to solve your problem, you present the problem. My problem is I don't have enough parking.
And that's what Chris Hoagland said, that really the
Yes.
library trustees, all they really want is parking.
Yeah,
And
so who
that was said.
consulted or advised or told the consultant to come up with what Sean was just talking about and all of this? So clearly, somebody told them to do this. So that's one thing. So to go back, I've attended both forums as well. I have been paying attention pretty closely. And I also had a couple questions. So under why we're here, it says the select board support, and it said received unanimous approval for the task force to delve into expanding parking after 2 presentations. So, and it said specifically the task force, and, Sean mentioned the 4 members of the task force. What date did the select board meet and they voted to support and create this task force? Because I haven't been able to find that. And my recollection is before the first public forum, the select board met and they, I think, only met and directed, oh, let's have a forum to discuss parking. It was a parking issue. So yes, at that point in time, it was a unanimous approval to discuss parking. But on this slide, it says received unanimous approval for the task force. So I would like to know the date when this task force was formed. And I would like to watch that select board meeting so I can hear for myself what this task force was directed to do. Because, the library is a victim of its own success. I think they have self-inflicted issues. I love the library. I might have mentioned this before, the East Milton Library. The children's room was named after my grandmother and my father because we supported the library. So I don't want people saying I don't support the library. I support the library. I support everything about the library. But I also support the rest of the town. I support our green spaces. And I just don't understand how we got from parking to how we got to this. And the conversation at the first forum was all about gathering spaces. The town needs gathering spaces. And I offered up, my business, and I suggested other businesses in town would gladly offer gathering spaces. The plate closed and no one had any place to go because the plate closed. And I was frustrated to hear, that Milton Youth Football is and cheer meeting at the library. That's the biggest program in town. The biggest program in town, football and cheer, and I know that because I was part of it. Why are they meeting at the library? That doesn't really make any sense to me. We have a shuttle that Milton Hospital is providing to their employees down to St. Elizabeth's Church. Why can't the library team up and with Milton Hospital with that for their employees? I do have a problem with the process too. And I feel like this has gotten ahead of everybody in town. No one really knows about it. And, we are a planning board and we're here to move forward with good ideas. But also our job is to scrutinize those ideas that might have some shortcomings. And I believe that this project has a lot of shortcomings and it's not in the best interest of the town. And yes, because we're short-staffed, we don't have the finances. I don't know why we're moving ahead on something that I don't think in the end is a good thing for the town.
Liz, can you click to the next slide? This reads development partnerships and examples, Lawrence Hill.
Yep.
What's the next slide?
The next one I think was
Islington?
Yeah. So municipal parking, adaptive reuse, historic property, retail,
Yep.
opportunity, branch library. So that's the, that's sort of the creative piece where you could try to.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that. I'm in that building often, but we all know today, office space is not being built. Office space is not. There's more empty office space everywhere. It's not, office space will never be built in a, if we're asking a developer to build something, the only thing they're gonna build is residential.
We have an expanding hospital where there are medical practices that are tax paying. The offices for those practitioners are not in Milton. So their tax dollars are going to adjacent communities. They're the largest employer in town, the Milton
Medical
Hospital.
office. Medical office, right?
There's,
That's a
So a doctor's
possibility.
office,
There
That's
is-
a
dentist's
possibility.
office.
If you look at the draft of the existing conditions that hopefully we're gonna talk about, the Milton Economic Development Plan, you'll see in there the kinds of office space that's in demand. And the reason, and they have opined that part of the problem with Milton is that the, what's offered as office space isn't meeting the demand of the office market. So, you know, whether there's opportunity for having a piece of property that is currently tax exempt, have an opportunity to have tax revenue come from that property is something the larger community should have a conversation about. And it should definitely be beyond, you know, this board or one or two boards. It's a discussion for the town overall. So hopefully people will think about whether this is an opportunity that the town should consider as we have to be creative in meeting our needs and our challenges. There's no clear solution for how to meet the needs of the library. And there's trade-offs, and people are going to have to weigh in on what they think is an acceptable trade-off. And so hopefully people will watch the presentation, we'll go through the slide deck, and all of the information, as Chris said, is on the library's website, and then offer their own opinions as they continue to gather them and be informed by them. And everybody here can go and participate in the next public forum.
The problem I have is that the door is closed to anything except the proposed building across from Town Hall. You know,
I'm
one
just gonna
thing-
go back that there was
So one thing I learned,
extensive
excuse me, I'm
other
still
places
talking at
studied.
So one thing I learned from the memory clinic is that when you tear up wetlands and you build on them, you can reconstitute the wetlands as long as it's something like a 4-to-1 ratio. And it looks like at the Reedsdale site, you have plenty of space to move the wetlands and put a parking lot right there adjacent to the library where somebody could easily walk right to the building. Just
So
seems like,
again, if you
to me, it seems like a
listen to the
no-brainer to
forum,
be there.
you listen to the forum, the Conservation Commission and the Conservation Officer were contacted about that, and it was a no-go. It was a non-starter. The trustees reached out to the hospital about the shuttle bus. No capacity because they needed it.
Buy
The
another bus.
hours for the church parking lots don't coincide with the need. It's all in the report, it's all in the presentations.
so as a,
Everybody
I just
just
found
needs to
that
go
if
through
you can
it.
build on the.
as a member, I mean, I think it's fair for us to have some conversation here, maybe you could answer some of the questions. But, so there's no room on the bus for, there's no room, let me say it differently. The hospital transportation had no capacity to support the library, is that what you're saying?
They needed it for themselves.
Did we consider getting our own transportation
To where?
down to St. Elizabeth's?
There's no capacity in that lot for anybody but the
What
library.
about Council on Aging? Cause one of the,
They're
one
full
of the,
capacity as well.
the Council on Aging's
They are,
there
well,
to bring.
Well,
their
it's the
representatives to
parking
library.
lot that is at capacity, not the shuttle bus.
So,
It's the parking at the Council on Aging that's at capacity. It's the parking around Town Hall that's at capacity. And the times at which the churches are available, which they can't commit to on a regular basis, are not the times of highest demand. So, you know, it might be a couple hours here or there, but it's not like you could tell people who want to participate in a program that that's gonna be available at that time of that program. So all of these things were studied and there's more detail on the library's website about them. And I'm sure they'd be happy to go through them all again and have a summary, but it's all there. And if you'd like to have a more detailed recap of all of those at the next forum, I'm sure they'll be happy to provide that.
I'd rather have somebody attend the planning board representing the committee and answer the questions that we have.
That would be great. I just know the memory clinic had a river running through it, and they were able to build on that. I can't see why you can't do that here. just looking at this. It doesn't make
There's
sense
not a
that
lot of land there,
it's a
Jim.
no-go. It looks like it's enough for maybe not 50 to 60 parking spaces, but 20 or 30.
It was all flagged for the wetlands. There was a
I
survey
understand that.
prepared with it all
But
flagged.
did they look into
Concom
regenerating the
talked about
wetlands
it.
somewhere else?
Steve Ibis
wonder if
talked
they
about
did.
it.
Well, I do have to say, what we have a responsibility is in the master plan and protecting the historic character of the town. And scenic roadways are under our provision, which means stone wall removal, tree removals. This literally would be, and the hypocrisy is, we would have a sign, Tree City USA, and then we would clear cut that lot. And you cannot dig with a spoon. It is a clear cut to put parking
I
in
know
there.
you keep using the term clear cut, Meredith. It's not clear cut. You have, look at just recently, these recent storms, how many trees came down across town? Trees have lifespans too. The trees are being evaluated. From what I understand is the DCR forester has identified trees of value which are near in the wetlands, and trees that, according to his opinion, were of low value. So that report will come out. So let's just be clear, instead of using terms that we know are
It's
inflammatory,
a
like
natural, it's a
clear cutting.
natural buffer.
Cheryl,
It's a natural buffer,
but let's
yeah,
just be
it's-
realistic, you're an architect. The math of 60 spaces is, as I said, you probably know it very well yourself, it's 20,000 square feet. If you're gonna create a 20,000 square foot area for parking, no matter how you do it, and then you need a perimeter around it, what do you call taking all the trees off half an acre? I think it's fair to call it clear cutting.
So
You ha-
60 spaces
but
is two
you-
levels.
you're
Your
describing-
one level is not that size footprint that's being discussed.
So you think you're gonna do 30 over 30? Is that what you're
You
saying?
have a lot of topographic change there, and that's a possibility.
It's
yeah.
getting more expensive. It's getting even more expensive. It's a fantasy, it'll never happen, but I guess I'm arguing this point that, we can't have people listening to this think that we're gonna selectively take trees out. You're gonna take out half an acre of trees. The way that Meredith described it is an accurate way to describe it. You're gonna clear cut where you're gonna put the building. There's nothing wrong with that description. That's in fact what's gonna happen.
And this is a national historic district. How does that contribute to
Look,
preserving the character of a bucolic historic town?
Is it the role of the planning board to sit here and have an argument about it? Submit the
No.
comments, submit your concerns, let the library
It's-
know how you
it's-
feel about it. If you want to have the library, if
It's
you
a
wanna have a
concerning
role in
process.
discussing it, it sounds like you're
Liz, can you say
closed
that?
off to having any discussion about whether there's something that can happen there or not.
Have a
So I
discussion.
don't know what
Cheryl,
role the
have a
planning board
discussion.
would have.
This has gone so far down the road without the planning board being brought into it. And you're a member of that group. You could have come to us and said, hey, here's what I'm working on to help the
You have
library.
known that this is being worked on by
Cheryl,
the
why
MPIC
do you
before
make it that way? We've known.
You make it sound like you haven't been aware of this, and you have been aware of it, because you went to a forum in 2024 about this, at
I have
least
not.
these folks have.
Cheryl, this
Which
is
was
like,
for parking
this is like the
only,
conversation
yes.
about master planning. We're supposed to read your mind. You come here that master plan committee or that master plan article that you were working on, you easily could have said something to the planning board. You chose not to. And again, you're
We're gonna
working on this
rehash
and you
that
chose,
again?
and you, no,
Sean.
Cheryl, this is how you,
Track record.
this is, Cheryl, this is how you
track
conduct
record, Cheryl.
yourself.
This is way off agenda.
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
ridiculous.
I agree.
It's
Control
not
the meeting,
ridiculous.
Meredith.
You know what, we're gonna move on
Well, can I
because
just talk about the DCR guy for a minute, Forester? I just find it interesting that the DCR Forester's professional opinion is totally ignored during the land swap discussion.
That's not on the
And
topic of
and
the
now
agenda
all of a
either.
sudden, the DCR land forester's opinion has so much weight. At least I'm consistent. Trees are trees no matter what site you're on and where you're located. So you can't pick and choose to have professionals just because it fits a certain agenda. But if we're moving on, I still would like answers to my questions. So I'm not sure who to ask where do I get, who will answer my questions?
Chris said it at the beginning. Send it to
What-
she and to
What
Will.
dates did the select board meet?
Send them an email and ask them for the date.
Support this project? And when did they unanimously approve the task force?
So if it would be helpful, I would be more than happy to summarize the discussion here this evening and put it into some type of a format, a comment letter, desire on behalf of the board to, to make to put their ideas and opinions, in that format and to be part of the RFP development process. So I'm happy to do that. I think that's probably the most
what I think would
efficient
agree.
way to move
That would be
forward.
helpful.
And if in the future, you want to think about the process for weighing in on these, municipal types of projects, then maybe that's another discussion, to
That's-
have a more formal process for that.
And also, before a project is even considered, just from, again, a process, should we be looking for a traffic plan? And my understanding is the DPW doesn't have a traffic engineer. So shouldn't the first step always be to evaluate
I think they are doing a
traffic?
traffic, but I don't know if it
But
includes.
that should be done prior to moving forward with
I
any
agree.
design or suggestion. So I would also like to know if a traffic, if anybody consulted anybody, has the traffic commission been spoken with? What are their thoughts?
Do you know if they've been reached out to?
The traffic commission, I don't know. The report from the consultant came in since the forum. I think if it's not on the website, it will be on the website. And I'm sure it will be summarized in the next public forum.
Alright.
And I think the memo, the same, when the forester finishes it, will be made available to
And the
the
only
on the same
other
website.
whole ironic thing about this is every other project in town, every development, we're focused on reducing parking. We're focused on increased walkability, increased biking, and we don't need more parking. Let's reduce parking. Let's put 100 units here, but let's only give them 50 parking spots because they don't need it. So this is the only project in town that seems to, we need more parking. And I just think that's a contradiction in our goals in town.
Right. Thank you, Liz. That would be great if we could just sort of, it's just sort of a rough draft of, some questions and interested in being involved and being solution oriented, because if there is a real problem, which I don't hear people complaining about parking there, but apparently there is some issues at certain times that we would, it would be great to address. So with that, I'm going to move us to the next agenda item, economic development planning, continued discussion. For those who are, Liz, do you have an update? I watched the select board meeting on Tuesday. And it sounds like what they're interested in doing is working with the planning board and allocating a $50,000 amount from the from free cash and splitting it between the planning board and the select board. I think at this time they would like to know that the planning board would be interested in continuing to participate in an economic development plan. My understanding from Nick is we don't have to, I've shared the scope of work, the contract with MAPC, or I've asked that Nick shared the contract, the scope of work that we had accomplished, and the existing conditions report that had been provided by MAPC, so that the select board could see the work that we've already done, because we wouldn't want to be recreating that, that same work, no matter what consultant we worked with. I did just put a plug in because I thought MAPC was doing a great job. They've done a great job with the public outreach, particularly with East Milton Square. And at this point, we don't have to determine scope quite yet, although we had Judy Barrett's scope. I know Cheryl, you had some suggestions and some ideas of, things that maybe you would want to see on MAPC. I think Nick, what he just needs for us, because we can put this on the agenda again, he just needs to know that we would like to accept $25,000 and participate with the select board on doing an economic plan. And then we can have a future conversation on what that scope would look like. one of the things, and again, we can put this on another meeting. We've done a lot of work with East Milton and the Milton Village, and as you saw, like in Judy Barrett's, she was talking about looking at East Milton, looking at Milton Village. I don't know whether we would like to, just to be thinking about this, maybe advocate for a more focused economic development plan on the west side of town, which has sort of been one of our goals, to really give that some real, study for economic development, and really providing some things that I've been hearing the areas of Milton don't feel like we've, and I know you brought this up, that those certain areas have not been studied the way East Milton and the Milton Village are. So would we want to have a focused concentration in the west part of Milton, since we literally, the ink is just dried on the East Milton overlay zoning. We're just seeing things begin in Milton Village. Again, we don't have to discuss this, but we might want to have some recommendations on what kind of scope that we would be looking at. But personally, I think this is great that they are wanting to continue this work, and they would want to allocate funds to work collaboratively together.
How does that work? Collaborative together work?
That was my question.
So obviously, we would have to determine the scope, which they had wanted our input on the scope of an economic plan. I think I would like to see both our leading by our staff, our planning staff, to sort of coordinate. I think what we would have to have is the consultant would operate in public forums. So our board would attend the, sort of walk through the way MAPC, when there's a public forum, when there's updates, that we actually have a separate meeting outside of planning board meeting, outside of select board meeting, and have our meetings held at Council on Aging, and have, our updates, our reports all made publicly, and work
So we
in a process
we
together.
met with MAPC when they started the work, and their existing conditions report references our comments. I don't know why we would stray from the scope that was contracted with for MAPC, and except that they could incorporate some of what we provided them in that meeting in October of '24. Because this is the first thing they've really gotten
Right.
since that meeting. And I think we all had agreed to the scope then. I mean, having read through
I would like to
this-
do, that's what I would love to keep with MAPC, to
Yeah,
continue
and having
from-
read through the report, there's a lot of good data, and their next steps that are listed in the report make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
And looking at their scope of work and their next task, they would be moving on to task 2, which is the community and stakeholder engagement. They were hired to do that for the East Milton Fire Station. They were hired to do that in the west side for Pagoda Circle and for 7 Brush Hill Road. And so I think it makes sense to me, if they still have the people who were working on this available, to continue to do the work that they were contracted to do, I guess as an amendment or change order, or with different funding source. And if the select board,
So I think you're probably short a little bit of money.
Yeah, because that's what I'm gonna say, this budget originally was $99,390, and now it just seems like they're $50,000. So I would think that it would have to be reduced. So, and I read through the existing, conditions, and I found it interesting that I don't think it was 100% accurate. So under the, the occupants of office, commercial and industrial real estate by tenure, it lists a lot of businesses in town, but it doesn't list a lot of businesses in town.
so you have to find out where they got their,
Yeah.
the source of the
So-
information.
Correct, and
So you're talking about the appendix C?
It's on page 14
Yes.
of
Is
40,
there a
so it's
potential for-
CoStar, which is
Okay.
pretty, you
yeah,
know,
appendix C,
standard.
industry and real estate. data, then you go over to the next page, page 33 of 40. And it lists, so it says on page 1 that there's 707 business establishments, so I would like to get a list of those 707 business establishments with their addresses. And I understand that if you take like, the Rockland Trust Building in East Milton, there's a lot of businesses in there. So let's group the businesses by addresses so we can figure out where they are located. I do like Meredith's suggestion about doing it on the west side of town, because I think that's really where the greatest potential is. East Milton has been studied to death, and I don't think that they're ready for anything new to go over there at this moment in time. So if we really are actively trying to move the needle, I think the greatest potential is the west side of town. Somewhere in this, they mentioned Randolph Ave, and Randolph Ave has changed considerably with all the development and the road diet, so I kind of feel like that needs to get put on the back burner till all that development gets finished, and then we can understand the impacts. So I think if we're trying to reduce the scope financially, because we don't have the funds, we should be realistic in what we want. And then also I am concerned about, 2 boards. What if we have differing opinions? Whose opinion, who takes preference? And I am greatly concerned about that.
Isn't the idea to finish
Consensus.
what, isn't the idea to finish what MAPC started?
That's what I think we should do.
Right.
It's
I
so,
would-
so about 20 of it has been, is 20,000 of the 100 is what you see, what's
Mhm.
happened. So it's 80. And so you've got 50? So or is it 60? I thought, for some reason I thought, did it change to 50? I thought I heard 60, but maybe it's 50. Let's assume it's 50. So there's 30 grand that has to come out of this.
So what's their time frame though? Because can it come out of 2 fiscal year budgets?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering too.
Because
Earmark a certain
Yeah.
amount from.
We
from
talked about
both
that last
boards,
week.
it should come from both boards. And,
So maybe use planning study funds for fiscal 27, potentially?
Mhm.
Okay.
and, I just feel as if it needs to be what it started out to be, which is the business districts, and then add West Milton. I think West Milton is the densest area we have in town. And I think the opportunities are going to be for local neighborhood retail at most.
Right.
And is there more that we can get from anything else? I don't know. Is it Randolph Ave? But I think the townspeople will want to know, is there a way to have another revenue stream so the taxes on the residential taxpayers aren't continuously burdened? And in order to do that, I think you have to look at the whole town. You can't answer that question for residents without looking at the whole town. You can still address what we know, there's been an interest in neighborhood services in a part of town that doesn't have them.
So I
And
would,
we talked about, which wasn't included, was the pre-existing businesses. And to
Right.
me, that is hugely important, and that is not in the original scope. And I really think we should put that in.
I absolutely
priority.
agree, that should be added to it. Thinking we all talked about that at that October meeting.
They're 3, based on the way I interpret their contract, they're 3 months into a 12-month task. So we should be able to span calendar years.
Mhm.
Because they have not, if from the moment we go forward, the way they outline it, they have 9 months to go.
yeah, it was supposed to wrap in 2025.
Oh,
Yeah.
we know what happened. We.
But yeah, I know.
Have staff.
And the fun, and it
Yeah,
was
funding
it
was
was
full.
funded,
But it was a
yeah.
full year it was 12 months to begin with,
Right.
right?
Right.
So.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make sense to do 75% of it. It makes sense to do it all.
And add those certain areas. Well, I would entertain a motion to accept accept the grant for whether it's and we'll clarify whether it's 25,000 or 30,000.
Is the select board okay with completing this MAPC work?
Yeah, that would we would
I
wanna
mean,
ask.
I mean,
yeah.
it sounds like they're okay with funding. But we should make sure that they're okay with funding so we can get MAPC going again.
Yeah, have they reviewed the scope that MAPC had been contracted for, Liz, and this existing conditions component, do you know?
So I shared both of those documents with the town administrator, and I think Meredith kind of captured it at the outset, that there would be some discussion about, and that's part of these two boards, both of your boards sort of co-leading this. There would probably be some discussion about, similar to maybe including West Milton and talking about pre-existing, maybe some of the pre-existing legacy businesses. They may have some things.
So before we accept
So I
the
don't,
money,
I don't know, I don't know.
without those details?
Yeah,
Pardon me?
I think that take those details back, Meredith and Liz, to the select board, that we'd like to finish this scope. We'd like to
Right.
add the pre-existing non-conforming, and we'd like to add West Milton, which was not included in here previously. So
Now, won't the question be
there'll
what,
be additional funds
right,
too.
so do you think is it possible to ask MAPC what those additional components would cost? Do we? And at least then we're going to the select board with
That makes sense.
the complete value.
Sure. And if you want to ask them if there's anything that they would think that they can tweak here, since this was 2 years ago scope, to help with the cost.
Because now, since this, the East Milton overlay zoning's been done, so there was a lot of, outreach, so that would be less outreach that they would have to go back.
But one of
and-
the things I think that happened there is that were left in question was some of those pre-existing non-conforming that look like they're in the business district, but they're not. And they're not in the overlay. I really think that that's part of East Milton, is to update the business district to at least have the conversation. Cause the overlay is on its own, the business zoning is separate, remember? So like, should that, where Rockland Trust is, be in the business district? And because then you're having it be, not have to go to the Board of Appeals every time there's
No,
a change.
and I understand that, but I also understand that we've already heard from East Milton residents that they don't want it.
But that particular, I
Maybe
know
that's
that,
why.
there's a couple of properties, so I think,
I think that is in our map.
but it's not in the
It's in our-
business, it's not in the business district, as I'm saying. So you have the underlying zoning
Right.
and you have the overlay.
Overlay.
The overlay has one thing, but it's not the same as the business district. So if we put it in the overlay, we should look at the underlying too, is what I'm saying.
Is there any need to accept the split with the budget? Is there any need
I
to do?
think, well, the only question is, it sounded like Nick needs to get it approved by the warrant committee.
Right.
For town meeting. Right. So,
So we have to think about how much this is going to cost, and it's gonna be a lot, and planning board, we just put our funds into codification, but we did, I would say, if there's a planning board funds for the next fiscal year, if we can get consensus or a vote that we would put funds in, I don't want to see 100% of our funds, because we don't know what
Right.
else we needs we might have. But if we could get free cash and select board and piece together, because I think it really is an important effort.
It's
And
very- yeah.
it should come from multiple sources, not just from our minimal budget.
So what is our FY 27 budget?
50,000.
How much?
50, we asked for 100.
Plus the codification.
So-
Plus the
Yeah,
codification.
but so
That hasn't changed
We
in,
put a
Yeah.
request in for,
I think we went up to, I think it was up to 100. It was 50
we
plus
did,
an
but
additional
I
50
don't know
and
if
I
we're
think
getting
I think
funded
that
that.
down 35, I thought.
Right, exactly.
So-
Yeah.
85 total.
So we got 85 total, okay.
so we have 85, and so now 25 of that is going to this.
No, that would be
No,
given to
no,
us in
Okay,
addition.
Yeah,
Okay,
So that would come
right.
from free cash in
Okay.
addition.
so we
Exactly.
still
on
have
top of this.
50.
And would the
So we'd have
select board
110.
contribute
We'd
to
have
this at all?
110.
The select board contribute to this at all?
Yeah, they
Yes,
were contributing
25.
25.
We should
But
ask
it's
for
from-
another in the next
But it's
fiscal
free,
year
it's
too.
from free cash, yeah, that's, yeah.
So
So we should ask
cover it.
them to consider another piece of funding from the next fiscal year too. To piece it together from multiple sources in 2 different fiscal years, I guess is what I'm suggesting.
There's at least a $30,000 shortfall. Plus 30,000 is the shortfall that we know right now, plus when you ask for those additional services. And
Yeah.
and I mean, to be, I guess we have to consider, this was June of '24, it's 2 years old. You know, and this is primarily their labor, you know, and if their hourly rates have changed, we may see something that,
Well, the other thing is MAPC has grant funding available.
True.
We have benefited from that in East Milton Square and Milton Village. And
Yep.
I know at one point, we were told that if you avail yourselves of the grant funding and you don't actually proceed with the zoning, then you're less likely to get approved for future grant funding. But we did just approve East Milton and we did previously approve Milton Village. So I think it's worth asking if whether there's any grant opportunity to help. And even if it's passed for right now, if we plan it out for the next fiscal year again.
So, yep, absolutely.
So I guess, yeah, we do have just some questions and that we would like to move forward with this, adding to this, you know, to the scope that we have, but maybe there's areas that MAPC feels like they could reduce the costs in some areas if they felt
So
like
the
it's steady.
funding question though, like to sort of have that beginning, that sort of like basis of that funding with these additional sort of pieces to be resolved.
We would
to-
want that 25 to
Yes.
30.
Yeah, we'll
Right.
never say no to money
Okay,
Well, for this
for
purpose
this,
though.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I just want,
We would like
wanna
the
make sure I was
20
clear on that.
25 to 30 and
Well, and
we
if
would
we
like
need
to
a
see
vote
match
on it,
funds.
if we would need a vote on it, then do we need a vote, Liz?
I mean, it sounded
Probably
like,
just, yeah,
I mean, are you comfortable with just a sense of the board or do you think a vote would be
I
better?
think we could just take a vote just to let them know that
Okay, then I'll make a motion to, I guess it's to
to accept
accept
free cash.
$25,000 free cash to be earmarked for the next steps in the economic development plan that was started by MAPC.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Quick discussion,
Oh,
we
yeah.
can still add to the scope and tweak it, right? Next meeting after.
Yes, and that's what Nick was saying. Don't worry about the scope tonight. Really, he just needs to know that we would accept the funds to work towards completing.
I'm ready to vote yes.
Okay, and so it's, we'll be involved in the process of this creating the
scope.
scope. Yeah, so that's the understanding.
And I agree that I think we would like to pass on that we would like to continue with MAPC and continue
This study a little bit updated.
the scope that we have, but maybe and add the West Milton and non-conforming businesses.
I don't think it makes sense to shift, honestly. I mean, as much as I think Judy Barrett's company is a wonderful company and do great work. I mean, it's like, you'd have to sort of start again. And why do
throwing
that?
20,000
Yeah.
away.
Why do that?
One thing that would be really cool is that at the end of this, if we could get some kind of a value for every square foot of commercial space adds whatever to revenue. And it helps us with our deficit, our town deficit,
Yeah.
we say 100,000 square feet at $18 mill rate, and you've balanced your budget. I don't know if it's as simple as that, but that would be super helpful for me. From reading this, just to see what all this means.
So maybe one of the things, I mean, we have a motion to vote, but one of the things still, was I think if we could have a representative from MAPC come in and talk to us, just to kind of brainstorm on the scope, to address your question, to address these other things that we've talked about. Or if you feel like if you can do that with them and report back, that's okay too, but,
Okay.
call the vote.
Yes, so I think we had a second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So now the next is the East Milton fire station. Just any comments that we would like to provide on the RFP.
I have, Maggie sent some comments around, so I made hard copies. I'll just hand them around.
Is that the extent of the RFP, what we had in our documents that was emailed?
That's it,
Yes.
that's it, yep. A
Mine,
draft.
No, not yours.
Yes.
Yeah, this-
I think I have it already, so.
Okay. John?
Thank you.
Okay,
I have
So you-
I have two hard copies of the document, if anybody
okay.
wants one in front of them.
Yeah,
Document meaning the RFP.
Oh,
that-
and I
Yeah,
don't
the
have
draft, the draft RFP, yep.
Did you get a copy, Cheryl?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And you wanna give that one to Jim?
I'll take one.
And then,
Yeah.
there's an extra. Avante, did you get one?
Yeah,
You got-
I have the
yeah,
one
okay.
that Liz gave me earlier.
All right, so do you wanna?
oh yeah, so when I was reading this RFP, again, I attended the forum, and it was a great discussion, and what I got out of that forum was there was an overwhelming desire for the town to retain ownership of the building and the property. And when they went through and the memo document that summarized the forum, it states, received 15 points, town-owned commercial space. So I wasn't just alone in my thinking, it's here in the memo that summarized it. So when I was reading this RFP, I didn't get the sense that this RFP reflected the will of the taxpayers and the residents. And for those people who did not attend the forum, there's also been a robust conversation on Facebook about the property. And I think that discussion also confirms that most residents wanna keep it somehow. So I felt like this RFP needed to reflect the desire of the town to keep it and to work with any business or developer to come in and form a lease partnership with the town. So I just created some language that could possibly be used in the introduction so that when a developer or business owner started reading this RFP, they kind of knew where the town of Milton stood. It wasn't like confusing for them, because even if you go through it, it sends a mixed message all through it. It says, it is the select board's preference that the property be sold or leased. So the whole sold takes priority over the lease. And there's a whole, at the end, a whole purchase and sale document at the end. So I was sort of thinking, would it be possible to suggest that the first RFP be for a lease agreement? and put that out there and see what comes back. And also in the RFP, it's stated that it's the up to the applicant to they're responsible for obtaining any and all permits and variances and may be required to go to the planning board, the zoning board, conservation. So is there anything that we can do to help a potential business not be so scared of the process? So like, what can we do ahead even of the RFP going out? You know, Cheryl, you've talked about like the parking, so maybe we need to waive the parking requirement for that site. So the town needs to make it easier for an interested party to wanna lease it.
I agree. And I think it probably needs to be a long-term lease though, because they're gonna have to put a lot of money into it.
Right.
And it's not something you could do on a short lease and have capital. But I think we should say, I don't know if we can do that. One of the things, Liz, it would be interesting to find out is whether that would have to be a zoning board of appeal decision. But the other thing is like, if it's pre-existing building that, I know like for the Falcone building, when they renovated the building on Adams Street, the two-story building there, and it doesn't, you know, it didn't trigger any new parking requirements because it was just a renovation. So what they had on site was all that they were required. So I don't know how that works on a municipal building that's already existing that gets renovated for a new use. Would that trigger a parking requirement, or would it be one of those grandfathered uses? So maybe that's a question for Kathleen O'Donnell, the ZBA, or what maybe Michael White has an understanding. But I do absolutely think that we need to be clear, because to say that you're going to need to meet the requirements of the zoning, the underlying zoning of if it's business, which looks like people supported, right? The parking requirements would preclude it if you had to meet it. And I do think there's the site's small, and if the way they say you could tear it down, then, and they say they don't have to go with the highest bidder, and then they give some advantages or disadvantages. In order for that, I think, to pass muster and not be challenged by someone who submits, it has to be clearer than it, I think, than it is. So
Be helpful to put it in.
I think it would be helpful to find out about
What waivers could be given.
what the, and it might be that it only is offered up that the town will work to help support that development instead of saying that they're on their own.
Yeah.
Because we can't promise something if it's a ZBA action until it happens, right? But it would be nice to have clarity on what we think the parking situation would be in preserving the existing building.
The way it's written is confusing. To me, it'd be confusing. You can make an offer to either lease it or to sell it. The idea of selling it, we have no control over the building. The building can be torn down. So if I almost feel we need to make a decision. Do we want the building? And if we want the building and we don't want to see it go, then I agree with what you said, Maggie. I think we should remove the sale option and put it out there for lease. But I also agree with what you're talking about, Cheryl. We should make it attractive and tell them right now, when you put it out there, what relief we're gonna give them for parking. You have to. You have to. Nobody's gonna be interested in that property if they have no idea what the parking's gonna be like. I believe part of the RFP should be the relief.
I just
should
don't
be
know if we
written
can.
into
I just don't know if we can.
It is the board of appeals.
But maybe it needs to go to the
that-
ZBA. I feel like the town of Milton is rushing this RFP. And I think the town of Milton should do some due diligence before issuing an RFP And that could take time, and I think it is for the ZBA to discuss, and it's for us to discuss.
So what we could do is think about a zoning amendment to the business district ourselves. So, you know, we could have it be that on a parcel such and such, you know, that this business parking requirement is waived. Could be waived by the planning board. We could put that into the zoning, right?
Is that spot zoning?
I mean, no,
Because it would apply to other.
It would apply to others.
Areas, so we would have to
Yes,
look to see
yeah.
what other properties are.
I always consider waivers, I always consider anything that like is a waiver is varying. So I always wanna put that in the Board of Appeals bucket. But could there be a special permit
So
to
one
to
of-
reduce, like a special permit by the planning board to reduce the parking
Yeah,
requirement?
because we have that in our
potentially, maybe?
overlays. We have that
Yeah.
in our mixed use overlays, and I think we have it in the MBTA zoning overlays where a case can be made for
Yeah.
not having the minimum parking requirement. So if we can craft something that's an amendment to the underlying business zoning, because it's, right now, I think it's it's 4 spaces per 1,000, which equates to 1 space per 250. I did an analysis, you know, the building where the post office is in Milton Village, that I
60 Adams Street.
yeah, that building, to meet the parking requirements of the size of that building would be a garage behind it. You know, it's just,
Yeah.
it's just not feasible in any of our business districts. We should just change it, period. And figure out. You know, some places, you know, you're talking about Chatham, they solve their, I think it's Main Street it's called, but their parking for a lot of those businesses is in a number of municipal lots. And, you know, that's, you know, shared parking for the districts is really what is feasible for Milton. So having these small parcels that have to park themselves, I mean, it means you can't they can't reinvest. And if that's gonna come out in the economic development study, I'm sure. So why not tackle that?
Yeah, it's true. When I first saw this, my first inclination was, you know, that the town should just figure out what they want and permit
And
it.
zone it.
Permit it for that.
Yeah.
And then sell it like, but the town really can't be, that's what a developer does, like a town's not a developer, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you put all that energy into like a certain type of, you know, reuse, and then there's no market for it.
If the desire is to keep the building, if that, I'm not saying that's the only thing I'm in support of, but if that is the case, we should accompany the RFP with the relief that someone who's gonna lease it would need to be able to operate. We should.
Yeah, but the relief has to be granted on a specific
Yeah, it's gonna have to
proposal.
come.
I understand, but you could issue an RFP and the condition would be based on Milton creating the relief, right? You know, I know we don't have it, but you could issue the RFP and say, you know,
The applicant can rely or can propose relief that will be considered as part of the application. Right now, they're not saying that they're going to at all
Yeah.
entertain any relief.
that language is good, that works, yeah. You know, they just, we need to make it appealing. And if you don't put language like that in, or you don't create the relief in advance, no one's gonna want it.
Right. And I think
Especially if you're gonna keep
Carolyn
the
could
building.
help with that
It's a different
language.
story, if you're gonna allow them to tear it down, then it's a different story altogether, you know? Even that though is gonna need some sort of relief if you go that way.
Well, the problem, if you tear it down, you're going to need relief because it won't be, it's so difficult to meet the zoning. You know, it's
like, what would you, what could you
Such a
put
tight-
there?
It's like the
Yeah.
Swift Hat Shop.
And,
Yeah, like
yeah,
how, it's so tight, it's like this, you'd have to do some land assembly.
I know, it's this,
That's-
I
that's
mean,
what we're happening.
I was saying this recently in one of our meetings, it is all about geometry. It's the physical geometry that exists is really hard, but let's give it a shot.
But I think the way, just like I said earlier about testing the market, you know, the way you test the market on whether it's viable to do the historic restoration of that building is to put it out for that purpose. And if you don't get anything in response, then the market's telling you something.
But at least you've put it out there to try to fill that,
Right,
yeah.
right. I mean, That's a consistent philosophy on my part.
Yes, and so Maggie, I really appreciate what you drafted here. And I think that's good, like feedback for Liz to, if you could convey that.
I'll definitely, pass it along and
And
I'll-
just the proposed language changes that we would put in. And the other,
and then the summary as well of the discussion here tonight. I heard on the meeting that the appraisal was due, I think, the 1st of April. So next week, so
What
I
would
would
say about the
endeavor to-
appraisals are,
yes.
we may not get the use we want if it has to meet an appraised value. Because if you think about local businesses, their credit options are different than on a national chain that has a lot of investment. So we might have to take less to get what we
Right.
want, and I think we should be clear about that in the RFP.
and a longer lease term, yeah, that combination, right. I agree. And then I just wanted to comment on Exhibit E, I guess, the option to lease agreement has the wrong address on it. So that's, well, I don't know even where that came from, because I don't think it's even exists.
It must have just template.
Yeah, it was like a template, yeah, just, so I just would wanna make sure we were putting it out with the correct and not creating
That's
confusion.
So is it
Exhibit E.
doable to request that it's only for a lease and not a sale? Is that?
I can do that.
I mean, I think you can definitely, you absolutely pass that, I mean, this is the
Put language in that would give,
Yeah,
give the
I mean,
waiver.
I can't say that it's 100% gonna be adopted.
Correct.
But
It
this
is
is-
clearly what we heard at the forum, and I think was really across the board, everyone felt in agreement on that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you put on the fiscal responsibility hat, you have to try it, and if it doesn't work, then you have to go to the next plan, but because I do think if it's you don't want it to be a financial burden on the town, to keep it, right?
Yeah.
So, but it's worth testing the market for a lease.
And it's not even available yet, so I sort of feel like we're rushing the process. Our firemen are still using the building.
So one other thing I would say is, I know that they have it as an as-is, but again, if you're let's just say you're the person who wants to, me, Cheryl Tagayas wants to open a cafe bookstore there. And it's as-is, and it's been firefighters, and I don't know if it's got environmental contamination. I don't know what kind of risk that is. I don't know that I can do that. If the town, sometimes cities and towns will actually take care of remediation if the remediation is needed, so that you take away that risk, and then you can get that mom and pop type operation in there. So I think that's something else the town should consider.
In order to make that, decision and make that commitment, before you put it out there, the town should know what that cost is. That remediation, you don't wanna find that value out later after you're soliciting offers and you don't know what cost you're taking on.
But it might be an offer that's contingent upon that, and then there is time for
Could be,
a due
I mean,
diligence, and then
yeah,
there's
could be.
and to determine what
I'm just-
level,
I'm-
you're right, yeah.
I'm just saying it could even keep people away from
Yeah.
responding
Definitely,
because of the risk.
definitely.
The type of people who are willing to take that risk are usually people with deeper pockets, or companies with deeper
Right.
pockets, and that already sets you up not to probably have the type of place that's the
Mom and
the mom and pop local
yeah.
place.
Mm-hmm.
The building as it is 1,900 feet, right? So that's what, it's 850 over 850 or whatever, what is that, 1,900 feet? Is it 950 over 950, something like that?
It's got a
That's so
big
small.
first floor and a staggered second.
Yeah.
So maybe the thing you allow is an addition to it.
1,200.
If you remove the parking requirement and you allow an addition to help. But, I mean, that's more of a sale probably, but an addition on, unless it's a really, really long-term lease.
Trying to see what.
What I'm,
cost
I
of
think
a
what we're
21
saying
unit
is we have to be creative.
and work with.
What we know it's going to take to get the kind of uses that people all support. And this is, I think, with the way it's written, is put so much risk on an applicant that we're not gonna get that.
Yeah, it's not attractive.
Want to be so welcoming that we upset the other businesses in town. To waive the parking requirement here when Novara has to set up parking over it, across the freeway. And then these guys now come in with a brew pub and they have all night entertainment, and East Milton is already fighting for parking. But we let these guys come in and just have no parking. I think it's a pretty serious blow to the other businesses. I mean, I have a hard time with the no parking thing. I understand where we're going with it. We wanna make this building attractive, and we think it's gonna be a tax windfall and balance our
Right.
budget, but
Yeah, I think that's a fair concern, but also, it might create, the other way that the businesses may look at it is it creates some synergy and it draws some people to the area too.
Mhm.
So you're right, they may look at it and say, gee, that person got relief and I'm subject to other constraints, but they also may look at it and say, geez, if there's a brew pub in there, they're gonna be hungry after a couple of hours there, and maybe it might, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to look at it. I suppose our local businesses would comment on that. I don't know. Interesting. Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, and if it was any type of a special permit, other businesses could try to get the special permit to
Right.
have their parking requirements waived down or what have you.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't just, it couldn't just be that one site unless it was a variance for that one site.
However, it's town property, right?
Right.
Maybe that's different.
That's the difference, right?
Yeah, so it's not an exception made for one particular, private parcel, it's town property.
Thing I would say is that the other businesses have most of them are existing buildings, so they have that pre-existing situation that I mentioned before. It's just the restaurants that don't, because that is treated differently for the parking. So if it was anything but a restaurant, then it's not any different for everybody else, right?
So let's see if they would be willing to relook at that RFP and take that feedback and because I believe they all heard the same
Yeah,
public.
I'll draft something up for this, I'll draft something up for library comments, and then I'll circulate it before it goes anywhere.
That's great.
If you guys wanna, this one might be a little bit more timely than the library one, so I'll check in with Nick about timing to get the comments in on that, on the fire station RFP.
All right. Great. Anything else? We can move on. And we sort of have talked about the recodification, so is there anything else that you needed to add to that, or that was pretty much or updated and we got, voted for our funds to be encumbered to?
Yeah, that was, I mean, and thank you, I didn't think I was gonna get a vote until next month, which is great, cause now I don't have to be as worried about the end of the fiscal year. That's pretty much it, just the conversation and with Carolyn and getting a scope and hopefully getting some of that work underway sooner rather than later.
Great.
And we'd be able to do that because we're not waiting until the next fiscal year for some of the funding. So I think we should be able to, I'll have to figure that out with accounting and what have you, but if we can, secure a contract for the amount that's available in this fiscal year right now, and then add to it or something, we'll have to figure something out on that.
All right, that's great.
Okay.
And then we'll, and I did have one other question. Do you know, because I know we voted, and I meant to ask you this in your update, on the MAPC's, the economic feasibility letter that we had asked, that we had
Asked to be
Asked to-
submitted?
we
Yes.
asked the select board to submit to EOHLC. Do you know if they followed through with that?
Yes, so
That has been
that was,
sent.
I think Nick submitted that, let's see if I can find it. He submitted that to the folks at EOHLC on February 26th. And I have not heard, but I do remember the gentleman from MAPC saying that it's not necessarily the quickest turnaround. So it's been about a month.
Yeah.
So
I didn't think it was
I'll-
too lengthy, yeah, that's.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's just too lengthy in terms of their
That we would
approving
hear
it.
back from EOHLC.
Right, right. So I'll follow up on that. See if there's any news.
Thank you, and thank you all for the robust discussion, and thank you, Maggie, for this addition, this language, that we can also forward, maybe with our RFP for the fire station request. So, is there anything else? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great.